So the pictures are all Carl, and he's worked to get some additional materials in there, like some aerial satellite photography and stuff like that. So um, anyway, we'll move ahead. What? Oh, Carl wants to say hello.
Hey everybody.
Okay. Anyway, so here we go. May 2000, and just want to say this is about 1,000 miles down from Seattle to Moab. Now, why isn't that going, Carl? Oh, there we go. And I think probably a lot of Northwest paddlers can appreciate that particular view. Canoe and rain in the foreground. So we decided to drive. It's a 15-hour drive. There are some stops on the way, whether you want them to be or not. And Carl does want to let you, he wants to remind you that photography is hard work too. So anyway, so then finally we're getting to Moab, nice and sunny, finally. And this map kind of explains the logistics of this trip. You drive to Moab, which you see circled on the right, and the river can be taken in chunks, but we did Ruby Ranch, which you see on the upper left, down to Spanish Bottom, and you see that the Colorado River is coming in right there. So the Spanish Bottom is just downstream of the confluence. And the way it works is you hire an outfitter who will leave your car for you in Moab, drive you to the put-in at Ruby Ranch or partway down at Mineral Bottom, and then at the end of the trip, there's no road to Spanish Bottom, so they have to come in a jet boat, and you get a jet boat ride back up the Colorado to Potash, which is a takeout, and then they just take you to Moab, where your car is waiting all this time. So that's the logistics of this trip. It's 101 miles from Ruby Ranch down to Spanish Bottom, and you'll see the river miles on these slides, and they are in descending order, so the confluence is river mile 0. So we took 6 nights and 7 days to do this 101 miles. And there we are, packing the boat at the put-in at Ruby Ranch. Or there I am. Carl's doing the hard work of the photography again. So now we're ready to go. And just for people curiosity, that's an 18.5-foot Winona Odyssey that we used, and that was a really good boat for this particular trip. It's a completely flat water, so you don't need any whitewater attributes to the boat. So now we're putting in, and this is Labyrinth. Labyrinth is the upstream half of the run, and launching right on downstream into Labyrinth Canyon. This is actually a side channel, and I'll take the opportunity to mention that we were at a pretty high flow, so some of the side channels that different trips might not be able to paddle up, we were able to paddle up because of how high the water was. So Carl found these nice satellite photos showing our camps, and so this is our first night camp at a place called 10 Mile Bottom. We camped where the red X is, which I think was I don't know how official the campsites were, but you can see there is kind of a little trail scuffed out from the river. Carl says this one was marked in our book. And I also want to say that at the end of this, we have slides that discuss a lot of the logistics. So if you have logistics questions, that'll be answered for you at the end. This is a non-advanced, there's no lottery for this. There's no limit to the daily launches. So it's not like trying to get a Grand Canyon or any other kind of permit like that. You can go as long as you can work the logistics out. Anyway, so this was our first night's camp. And we went exploring up into those cliffs, just took a nice little stroll. and found some cowboy petroglyphs from 1882. And Carl says the ones up above are older. And he managed to surprise me and bring a martini for the first night. So that was nice. And then one of the landmarks in this upper section in Labyrinth is what they call the River Register. And it's just kind of a place where a lot of people for, I don't know, 100 years have scribbled their name on a cliff. So that's what it looks like from all sorts of years. Yeah, apparently the BLM is discouraging additional marks. So. But someone didn't get the memo. So this is looking downstream, upstream from the River Register at mile 76. And also another point I should make while I'm talking is the top half of this run from Ruby Ranch to Mineral Bottom is Bureau of Land Management property. And when you get to Mineral Bottom and you go down on into Stillwater, you're in Canyonlands National Park. So the rules are a little different. For example, if you had a dog you wanted to bring, you could bring it on the top half, but not the second half. A few other little rules I'll mention is all human waste has to be taken out. So you bring a river toilet with you. And you also need to bring probably a gallon of fresh water a day per person. So for us, for 6 nights, we had 12 gallons of fresh water that we took from Moab, and then we filtered and we settled and filtered in a bucket river water, and then filtered it for washing and stuff. So anyway, so you can sort of see how high the river was. This has some boils coming up. So that's about as high as the river gets normally, under normal seasons. This is pretty high. We found it was high enough that if a lot of the pictures you don't see me paddling, it's because we would just put the boat in and sit there, and we'd go 20 miles by about 1 o'clock with basically hardly paddling. But that wouldn't be true at other seasons. And second night on river right, I think, right?
Yeah.
That's our camp. And when we first got there, we were on our own, and we pitched our tent in this little pile of bushes, and a family came struggling down. This was one of the 2 days that there were significant upstream winds in the afternoon, and they were a group of engineers from Los Alamos and in New Mexico, Los Alamos National Lab, and they asked, we said, yeah, camp here. They couldn't, they were really struggling. We didn't know they had about 4 other families with them, but that was fine. But we had a lot of company that night. So. Oh, I skipped one, sorry. So that's the camp, and like we did almost every evening, and the great thing to do is just do a little exploring up whatever canyon you're near or up onto the cliffs. This is typical. We're still up in Labyrinth, I guess. Yeah. And again, we were able to get up some of these side channels that certainly at another time of year you wouldn't be able to get up. So one of the big landmarks besides the river register is the Denise Julian inscription, which he was a French-Canadian trapper who came through here in 1836, as you'll see. And so this is kind of a semi-mandatory stop along the way. You go up and see that. There's even a plaque for it. Tells you all about him. And there's what he scribbled. Apparently he did this all over the Southwest. Left his signature. And, oh, he went through cataract? But as you might have noticed, the boat was longer than the channel was wide, so we had to back out of it. We couldn't actually turn the boat around in that channel. So We're backing out. So now we're already close. We kind of had to speed through the upper part, Labyrinth, and just kind of flew through it in a couple nights. And now we're approaching Mineral Bottom, which is the halfway point and the only road access that you can use. So you can either do Labyrinth as its own trip, or you can put in at Mineral Bottom and go through Stillwater for the second half. And now you're going to be in the national park. So the road is quite legendary to go down to Mineral Bottom. And Carl found a good photo giving you a sense of what that... Oh, it's upper right. If you see that road snaking down the cliffs on the upper right, we're going to give you a little bit better view of that. Not our photo. So Carl says he drove that in his 73 Volkswagen Beetle back before I met him. So it's an exciting road, and they say that in the wrong season, if it's too muddy, you really can't navigate that. So we took a little break. Yeah, the other thing about our trip, besides the high water, was that it was over 100 almost every day. We just hit a heat wave, an unusually hot stretch for that time of year. So some of our hiking felt a little limited, and we sought shade as many times as we could. So there's Carl seeking shade. Yeah, lunch. So this is the Mineral Bottom boat launch. Yeah, only rode in the whole trip. And now we're going to head down into the national park, Canyonlands National Park, and there's just, again, so much stuff to see and stop at. And so here's a set of petroglyphs. I also want to mention that we have, at the end of this slideshow, we'll show you the guidebook materials that we used, and they would point out a lot of this stuff, so you were sure not to miss it, which was nice. So this is one of the petroglyphs that we stopped and looked at. And we figured out the petroglyphs are either Fremont or Anasazi, so somewhere between, I don't know, well, 400 to 1,000 years old, something like that. That's a close-up of that one. Not a petroglyph. I don't know when this dates from. They call it the Outlaw Cabin, and it's another nice kind of interesting place to stop. Explore this old cabin of some sort, whether it was actually an outlaw cabin or it was a rancher's cabin for cattle or something, but... Oh, sorry, I missed one. Here we are, looking in. And so you can't really see where the cabin is, but it was on the upstream side of this great big horseshoe, so it's on the bottom of that point of land there. And there's ruins we didn't get to that are marked, as you can see, Fort Bottom Ruin. And then we went around the bend and camped where that X is. And on this year, which was a long time ago, we had 3 out of the 6 nights we camped alone, and then 3 of the other nights there were people in the vicinity but really not next to us, except for the one night when they were right next to us. So this was called Tent Bottom, and that was our pullout on the river. Oh, yeah, Carl points out you can see me sitting in the shade. There we are. Yeah, sunset from that camp was pretty nice. The feature, and just you can really see how the river had some boils that just were coming up, um, pushing the boat around a little bit. Um, and that feature on the left, John Wesley Powell named it. He called it the Butte of the Cross, I think. Buttes of the Cross. There you go. So there is kind of a flatter area between Stillwater and Labyrinth, and part of that is this sort of broader area called Millard Canyon. Took a little walk around there. There is a Jeep road that comes down there, but I don't think many people use it, and I think it would take quite a four-wheel drive vehicle to get down to it. I'm not sure what the access is. Just in case you didn't see it, there's Butte of the Cross again. We ran into, I think it was people doing fish surveys, some National Park Service people, and they took our photo for us. Otherwise, we didn't have too many photos of us all together in our boat. So this area down here is called Anderson Bottom on the left, and there is a spring, and it's the only place you can really get fresh water on this trip. It's against those cliffs there, so yeah, it's an abandoned meander. So the spring was tucked in against those cliffs, and under there somewhere. And there's Carl dipping our water jug in the only spring available on the river. Carl says it was dynamited out by a rancher at some point. So, and anyway, so we still filtered it even though it was a spring, but it was nice to have a little injection of fresh cold water. The river's very, very silty. So it would be very hard to get all your drinking water from it. It's just, you'd never be able to filter all that silt out. It's okay for washing, but it'd be very difficult for drinking. So yeah, more features of Anderson Bottom. Yeah, trying to cool off. It was 100 and some degrees out, but the river was about snow melt. So all along the banks of this river, as you often see in the Southwest, are these big, thick lines of tamarisk, which is an invasive, and these trails go through the tamarask sometimes to get back to campsites. So, was it a hike or were we just checking out a campsite? Okay. Anyway, so that's these little trails that you can find to get yourself through those. And some of the campsites, at certain times of the year, I think mosquitoes are a problem on this. If you get on the wrong side of the tamarisk and you're out of the wind, that could be an issue. So this was another one of the ruins at River Mile 25, and you can see it up on the left, and then a little bit of a more zoom in shot on the right. Some sort of like a granary. And there's another one we'll come to that you can see a little bit better, similar kind of thing. There's the photographer. So our fourth night, we camped at this big oxbow called Turks Head. And Turks Head has a lot of... We're on River Right. Yeah, so the river is flowing from upper left down to the bottom. And Turks Head has a lot of interesting things to explore. Again, partly because of the heat, we didn't get real far on hikes, but we did. There's a bunch of ruins and some chert. You can, the shavings from when they made arrowheads. And we did have other people camping along the strip of a bench that goes along there near us, but we really didn't feel invaded on here. There's our camp. These are the only sea kayakers we saw. Apparently more people are doing it now in sea kayaks. I think you have to carry a lot of water, so you need to figure out how to carry big jugs. We had a 6-gallon jug and a 3-gallon jug and a couple 1-gallon jugs, so that could be an issue, but a lot of people are doing it in sea kayaks these days. There's no portaging, so that's kind of nice. It's actually very nice. So that gives you a sense of the little bench that we were camped on, but we're looking down at someone else's camp, and we were out upstream of this to the left. And climbing up on top, this is looking back upstream from the Turks Head, and if you explore a lot further, there's apparently quite a lot more ruins, and it's a good place to see how that tamarask lines the river on both sides in a lot of places. So we did find these ruins, which were pretty exciting. That was really fun to see them a little closer. Yeah, they weren't on the map, but it was kind of obvious why. They were just someone's afternoon project. So someone had created, yeah, so someone had made this, and it was, yeah, they're pretty cute. Anyway, so that was kind of a fun find, but we don't think it was very old. So. And passing by, these are probably rental canoes from one of the outfitters. Passing by in the morning as we left, these people were still up in camp. So, and Carl remembers that we did not have upstream winds except for those two nights in Labyrinth. At Stillwater, we didn't have the winds so much. And here's another panel of petroglyphs that we're looking at. Yeah, really quite involved. Yeah, Carl got to do all the hard work. And this is a little Moki house that we found probably because it was on the map, in the book. And we were impressed the wood was still there. We don't know how old this was, but it was older than the last ones we showed you. Yeah, there were little decorative stones, and you could see their fingerprints in some of it. So this is our second to last night, and we're camped by ourselves at a place called Stove Canyon on river left. So the river here is going from the curve in the middle to the right. And a couple things I remember about this camp was, one was that there was a shovel available to carve steps in the mud to get you up to the camp if you were slipping. And I think we had less of that than people who come when the river's lower, because the river just was so high. But the mud can be really slippery in this area. So yeah, people carved steps in it to get to this little campsite. There we are, all spread out.
That's what it looked like after
If you look at the very bottom, you can see me in that camera. That's a Where's Waldo picture. Yeah, there was a kind of marked path. So this is just what we did for exploring that night. It's a little hard. I'm not dressed very bright. So anyway. All right. So the thing that we remember about this camp was that looking at the river that evening, we saw pretty distinct time when all of a sudden there was a surge of driftwood coming down, and that's when we realized the river was peaking. Probably heat melting all the snow up in the Uintas and Utah and all the headwaters of the Green. And later I looked on the gauge, and just so for reference, the river was going at about 18,000 cubic feet per second. In that's about the peak for every year is around that. So it wasn't an unusual year. We just hit the peak. And to see that wood come down was very distinct. It was really clear that that was what was happening. So we didn't go very far the next day because we had a big target, and that was Water Canyon, which is one of the best hikes on this section of the river. So that X is the little spot we found on River Right to go up. So we paddled just a couple miles, stashed our stuff, and went for a hike up Water Canyon. And there is a path that takes you up. You can barely see it on the right, the trail, but it's easy to follow. And it takes you up, well, see, there's the only water in Water Canyon. So we doused ourselves with it as we went up. A little bit of fossils. Those are crinoids. And the trail, actually, I'm walking towards Carl, but then the trail makes a U and goes basically along the edge of that cliff to skirt that waterfall, or the dry waterfall there, and get up on the next level. So it's a little bit of an exciting spot if you didn't like heights. And we're trying to get up on this bare rock, which is really beautiful stuff. It's the slick rock that's really fun to ramble around on. And given a few more hours, or even another family, the dads were going up for an overnight backpack up to there just to get up into this really magical area of the slick rock and these, just beautiful bare rock up there. It's really pretty. So one more little step up. And we're looking back up into what basically is called the Dollhouse, and the Maze District. So anyway, you can see the trail. It's pretty well established. It goes up there. Water in the creek. Yeah. And yeah, 20 years ago. So we're looking back up into that Maze District from our hike. I don't know how much further we got, but that was about it. And you can see you're right up on the rim now, and it's really cool stuff. So that's a really neat hike. Looking back down, that patch of green at the very bottom is the river. Last night on the river. Sunset, yeah. And I changed my shirt finally. I thought, why not? 6 days in. So this is our last day, and now we're just going to paddle out to the confluence and paddle a couple miles down the Colorado and pull off and wait for our arrangement with the jet boat to take us back. So we've got just a little bit left here. This gives you an idea. So the Green River's coming in right to left, and the Colorado's coming in from the bottom where the arrows are. And does it show? So Water Canyon's the little strip of green that you see the farthest right. So that's where we were camped, just 4.5 miles upstream from the confluence. Carl says that's looking upstream, up the Colorado at the confluence. So 2.5 miles is really further than you want to go on this in that kind of boat. And so Spanish bottom is the takeout for anybody doing those flatwater sections. And there's what it looks like from the air. River's going right to left. Yeah? Yeah. So it's on river. It's on river right. And there we're looking for an eddy so we can make sure we don't miss the eddy. Yeah, the river was fast, so we really did not want to miss the eddy and end up in Cataract Canyon. And the jet boat is actually making an eddy turn there. You can see how high the Colorado is. And he's facing upstream, and we're waiting for him. Yeah, you can see how much current there is. So we're there was one other boat that actually was, I don't remember, they were already there, I think, when we got there. It doesn't matter. But anyway, there was one other canoe. And in fact, I think they were from Vancouver, BC. And then that's a lunch stop. We climbed. They let us. It's about a 4-hour. It's 50 miles back up the river, so it's about a 3 to 4 hour boat ride. So they let you leg stretch, and we took this little view of the jet boat with the 2 boats on top, and there we are. They will actually, the outfitter whose name is Texas Riverways, they will actually let you stash a 6-pack of cold beer with them and bring it down to you, which they forgot ours, so that's okay. And I also want to point out that we may look very, very tanned in this picture, but once we got to the Ramada Inn in Moab and started taking showers, it actually turned out not to be as much tan as we thought. It was just layer after layer of sunscreen and silt. So we look great there, but we're a lot paler the next day. This is an overview. We're almost done here. This is the overview, and shows you, actually this is just the Canyonlands section. So the circle on the upper left is Mineral Bottom, which is, as we showed you, halfway through the trip that we did. If we had to do it again, it's a tough decision. We'd either probably want to take another day or two, or possibly just do this lower section where we could do more exploring and hiking. But the upper's beautiful as well. But
Well, you know, hiking, we were committed to doing 20 miles a day of paddling. So we missed a lot on the Labyrinth section, and we knew we would. We just were paddling that section, and the books and the other reference materials show lots of ruins and interesting stuff in Labyrinth that we just kind of had to zip right by.
so yeah, it was we always hope to get back. So.
Yes.
So we're just going to show you a couple logistical things. We used 3 particular, well, we used 2, and then there's a third that we recommend. This is the great river guide that you really don't want to do this without. It shows you every inch of the river, shows bottom to top, so it's giving you all sorts of little history and landmarks and details and river miles. It's geology. It's just a great guide. And again, all this will be available by the YouTube. You can go back and look at that. This was handy as well for the Canyonlands, especially for the hiking.
Notes on the map so we could and stuff. And that's just a tiny bit of the map. The map says.
Yeah, it's a beautiful part of the country.
Yeah.
And then we, our friends Doug and Heather, loaned us this, and Carl spent quite a long time getting ready for this slideshow, poring over this to remind ourselves where we'd been and also just get a little more factual stuff. This is almost too dense to read while you're on the river, but it's a great book to have in your to read ahead and have for just specific references and stuff.
So just this map is showing the Turks Head area, and the big oxbow at the bottom, those little black dots are I mean, we were so wiped out from sitting.
It was 103.
Yeah.
Hey Beth, we can't quite hear what Carl's saying.
Oh, okay. He's just saying that that book is just as an example, those little dots on Turks Head. This is just Turks Head, and it's showing, at the bottom there where all the blue is. And he's just saying how many places we didn't get to see, that if you were really into seeing so much more of the ruins, the petroglyphs, even the 19th century stuff, that there's lots more to see that we did not get to, either because we were trying to cover too many miles or because it was so darn hot we didn't really want to hike too far. So anyway, but that's a good book, and that's also there. So anyway, I'm not going to read all this, but it's there for you guys, just so you know, some logistical stuff. The outfitters, one thing that's really important to point out, and I've spoken to the outfitters before we did the slideshow, is that Texas, it was great. They do these packages. You can rent boats from them if you want. They've got Old Town Discoveries now. You rent the toilet from them, and they clean it out, so that's even better. But they are limited in their capacity. So before you have to get a permit, just as a marker. You have to have a permit on the river. You don't have to compete with anyone for the permit, but you do have to compete with people for capacity with these outfitters. There's two, Canyonlands by Night and Texas. So before you get your permit, you need to, for a particular day, you need to make sure that one of those people could shuttle you if you need that, and then pick you up by jet boat. And if you want to be picked up by jet boat, if you want to do the bottom half, you have to be picked up by jet boat at Spanish Bottom. There's no other way out. So you really need to depend on them for the dates. And they told me they're pretty booked right now already for, they book up, start booking a year in advance, but you never know. Maybe you get a lucky. And I didn't talk to the Canyonlands by Night and Day, but they maybe have more capacity. And so all this detailed stuff about permits, the gist of it is you don't need to compete with anyone in a lottery like you would for the Middle Fork or the Grand Canyon. It's just, no limit to how many people can launch as long as you can work out the logistics. So how did the scribble get on there? Oh, sorry. And I think that's it. That's the end of our slideshow. And there we go. So Ollie, where are you?
I'm here. Thanks, Beth. I'm working on trying to find a way to get rid of those blue marks, but as we go through it. We've got a little time for question and answers right now. Beth, a couple came through the chat as you were doing it.
Okay.
Some about the time of year that was answered, and some permits that actually some other people answered. You covered which book we're referring to, and Don asked, how have things changed in the past 20 years regarding conditions, reservations, etc.?
Well, I think it's busier, like everything. I don't remember how far in advance we asked for, we called Texas, and I don't remember that second outfitter was a possibility then. So my guess is it's busier now. When I talked to Texas, she was saying that it sounds much more booked up than when we did it. And as far as their capacity limiting how many people can put in, I don't know if it would feel a lot more crowded on the river or not. Assuming they can make a trip every day, I assume more people can launch now. Again, they are the limiting factor, not the BLM or the Park Service right now. So I think, as far as that's changed, probably. The permit situation hasn't changed. We had to deal with, a backcountry toilet and all the same kind of regulations as far as fire pans. We didn't have a fire. We really didn't need a fire. So I guess that's a long answer to say I'm just assuming it's a little busier. But there's a lot of camping. There's a lot of campsites. So, other questions? Oh, right. That's a good point. So we did it. It was 18,000 CFS. And when I looked, a lot of people really like to do it in September and October. In fact, our canoe has been down it twice because Helen and Jim borrowed our boat once and did it after we did it. And I don't know when they did it, but I looked at the water levels on the gauges for USGS gauges, and it goes as low as 4,000 to 5,000 in April, in like September, October. So now we're talking a fourth of the volume that we did it at, and the sandbars are all exposed. So people camp on the sandbars, which would make it a whole different kind of experience. And April's popular as well, and that's a little higher. The flows are around 8,000, something like that. So about half what we were at. But I think it could be cold in April too. But anyway, did that answer your question?
Yeah, anyone else, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question, or go ahead and put it in the chat.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the chat, Ollie.
I'll read them from there if they pop up in there.
Okay.
So have you considered doing it again, Beth?
We'd love to. So our kids came along about 2 years after we did this, and the timing is I will say the timing's a little tiny bit tough with kids, because it just is so hot in the summer. Spring break's too cold, and by the time it's fall, it's either in school. So that's one issue. We'd love to do it again. Just somehow didn't fit it in with the kids anyway, but maybe we will again. So
If you did it again, would you do it again as the solo boat, or would you try to organize, just you two, or would you try and organize to go with some other boats? What do you think are the advantages and disadvantages of that?
It's not the kind of river where you have to worry about a second boat for safety, particularly. In fact, we never wore our life jackets, which, just between you and me, it was too hot. We had them. They were right there. It would be fun to do it as a group. It was very pleasant to do it just us. We do a lot of group trips of different types, and we didn't have to be on anyone else's schedule. We could be on our own schedule. And as I say, safety is not a big issue. And then if you have there's really no other rivers that are safe enough, I think, to do without the support of a second boat. It'd be fun to do with 2 or 3 boats, I think.
Hey Beth, this is Brian.
Hey Brian.
How about rattlesnakes? I've done desert trips, other rivers, and rattlesnakes are always a concern. Are there rattlesnakes in this canyon?
There's got to be, but we didn't see any.
Too cold?
No, it was 103.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, there's got to be rattlesnakes, but I don't know. We didn't see them. And we did, every day we took some sort of little hike. We saw the lizards. We didn't see a lot of wildlife, really.
Yeah.
I missed hearing, what year was this you paddled it?
We did this in 2000, Pat. It's been a long time.
2000 was a long time ago? No.
That's why we looked so young. So, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I would want to point out that I didn't mention. But I think we've covered a lot of it. If there's, happy to. We like to hike, so we would probably add a little extra time for hiking, whether it meant doing just the bottom half in the same number of days, or adding a day or two to lengthen the whole time. But remember that water, you do have to carry your own water. So we left town with 12 or 13 gallons of fresh water. So. Any more questions? Anything else? And I want to thank Carl again for his efforts, because he really worked hard to caption the photos and fix them up and such. So, and scan from slides. These are all originally taken on slides. So he digitized them all. So.
Well, thank you for sharing them with us.
Yeah,
It's
that
a
was
great
cool.
trip. I'd highly recommend it. Really wonderful trip. And it is nice that you can choose to do it without having to put a great big huge group together or worry about advanced permits. You know, there's just the logistics other than the shuttling stuff. The logistics are pretty simple, really. No portaging.
Right.
Camping's easy. And the sandbars, if you did it late, that would be a whole different kind of camping experience to be on those sandbars. So
That's probably when the rattlesnakes would be out in the fall.
yeah, I don't know. Could be. So there's lots of information online, and I provided some links to Canyonlands. So
Beth, did you ever get to go swimming?
what's that?
Did you ever get to swim in the cold water?
Carl's more of a cold water guy than me. That picture of me sitting here with my feet in the water, that's as close as I got.
Oh,
The water was cold.
But I swam. I did swim.
I think 103 would drive me in.
Yeah.
Well, Beth, you're getting a couple comments in the chat. I'll just read a couple of them.
Okay.
Peter of Jenny and Peter said he wants to do it again, but that he'd take 2 weeks instead of 9 days.
Oh.
And Peter also said it's like the Grand Canyon, but without the rapids. And you're getting a
Yeah,
lot
it's
of
beautiful.
thanks in there too. I'll make sure you can see that. And I think maybe I'll just kind of bring us to a conclusion here and say thanks from all of us, Beth and Carl. Yeah, very slick presentation and beautiful photos, great information, very thorough. So thanks a ton for doing that.
Thanks everyone for coming.
And I'll just remind everybody too, it'll be on YouTube later tonight, maybe tomorrow at some point. So you can look this up. It'll be on the Paddle Trails YouTube. And I'll just put one other plug in. The next one is coming up in April, and Steve and Esther Andrews are going to be speaking about paddling with kids. So keep an eye on the Paddle Trails website for that. And yeah, I'll just leave the meeting open just for a few minutes, and we can all say thanks, Beth and Carl.
I'll unshare, I'll stop share, and then I can see everybody. So there we go.
The addition of
You're coming on.
satellite pics, that was really clever. That added
That
up.
was Carl's idea. Yeah.
Good going, Carl.
Google Earth. Now
Thank
see, that has
you.
changed. That has changed in 20 years. I don't know if we had Google Earth 20 years ago. So
Well, Beth and Carl, thanks for sharing these slides. I remember when you guys did that trip in 2000, and it's been on my bucket list ever since. And I'm getting to go on a trip this May with some other friends that are also watching tonight. So super
Awesome.
inspiring. Yeah, thank you.
well, I think May is a great time. It was nice to have it. You know, it would be cold to do it too early. We've been in that part of this country when it's in April for spring break a few times with the kids, and we've gotten snowed on, and just, you know, on a river trip, I think I'd rather take the heat than the snow.
Yeah.
Me too.
So, all right.
We've done the blizzard thing.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thanks again. Bye.
Thank
you. Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks all.